Not only did he get slapped twice soundly, he was also turned bald overnight. But in fact, it was his own fault for courting death, because the second encounter was entirely his own doing. After all, as a dignified college student, how could he believe someone would be cooling off on a grave in the middle of the night? The point is, that person looked like a baby less than a year old. After Zhao Zhang recounted his grievances with a face full of resentment, Dr. Dian, who came to treat him, was already laughing uncontrollably. The old man was not only laughing at his audacity, daring to trespass into a cemetery at night, but also at his suddenly bald hairstyle. You should know that the strange doll Zhao Zhang encountered is exactly the legendary Zhu Yi. It is said that being patted by that thing can bring unpredictable fortune or misfortune. There is even a saying about this thing: one pat brings fortune, two pats bring misfortune, three pats and even the king of hell can't escape. Now he has already been patted twice. Although it can't be said there is any good fortune, the so-called misfortune is actually not that big. Now it seems. At most, it's just like getting a haircut. This made Zhao Zhang extremely depressed. You two are here to help me, right? What's funny? What's wrong with my hair? Isn't it important? It would be okay if it could really grow back. But the way it is now, all bald, makes him couldn't help but suspect whether the hair follicles on his scalp are still there. As soon as these words came out, the two old folks laughed even harder, bending over backwards. But jokes aside, fun is fun. It's good that Zhao Zhang is okay. So compared to the missing hair, how to avoid being patted a third time by that Zhu Yi is more important. After all, the saying, 3 pats and even the king of hell can't escape, is not a joke. Upon hearing that this matter could actually endanger his life, Zhao Zhang finally panicked. He clutched his head, saying he wanted to ask Uncle Police to uphold justice. Hearing this, Dr. Dian waved his hands repeatedly. What nonsense are you talking about? Do you think the officials would believe this? But unexpectedly, as soon as the old man finished speaking, Zhao Zhang's face suddenly turned green. He just rolled over and started to retch. It seems that this pat from Zhu Yi had some considerable hidden force. Looking at the young man's appearance of being hopeless, the old man finally became serious. He asked the old lady if she still had the red cloth for protection obtained from the temple. Upon hearing this, the old lady nodded repeatedly, saying that the year before last, the red cloth she asked for at Mount Tai Temple was a full Zhang Chinese foot, and she still hadn't used it all up yet. After hearing this, Dr. Dian finally felt relieved. He asked the old lady to bring the remaining red cloth, preparing to sew a talisman on the young man's back. So, in a short while, the old lady hurried back from home, and even brought the whole sewing basket with her. Then, under Dr. Dian's instructions, she began to prepare to sew a talisman called Shengyan. She cut off a piece of red cloth about 2 inches in size, and handed Zhao Zhang a piece of straw, saying that this thing needed to be held in his mouth, to avoid accidentally pricking the sole with the needle and thread while putting on clothes. Then the old lady lifted up the clothes on Zhao Zhang's back, preparing to sew the talisman on. Zhao Zhang was a little puzzled, wondering if sewing this thing on would make the hair on his head grow back. Upon hearing that the young man actually referred to the talisman as thing, the old lady immediately became unhappy. She said with piety, "This is protection obtained from the Grandma Tai Temple in Mount Tai. It's very effective." But it was just this moment of distraction that the old lady accidentally pricked her own hand. This made Dr. Dian, who was beside her, instantly frown. He seemed to want to say something but hesitated. But in the end, he didn't say a word. Before long, the talisman was sewn on. The old lady patted Zhao Zhang's back very satisfied, saying that with the protection of Grandma Tai of Mount Tai, all evil spirits would not dare to approach. Before leaving, the old man specially instructed Zhao Zhang to wear this piece of clothing to sleep for one night, and he would be fine the next day. Of course, to be on the safe side, the old man also handed him a wedge folded from a protective yellow talisman for emergencies. Although he didn't know if these things would be useful, teacher Zhao Zhang still sincerely bowed to thank the two old people. On the way home, the old lady couldn't help but ask the doubt in her heart, which was that since the Zhuyi from Zhangjilin was so strange and evil, why didn't you go and take it away? Dr. Dian shook his head with a smile, saying that thing cannot be moved, because Zhuyi has another name, called Yin-Yang Dao, Justice of the Underworld. If it is removed, it will inevitably make the human world lose a balance between the two realms. At that time, it might cause even bigger trouble. So that thing can only be avoided, not provoked. Speaking of shadows, in the folk culture of some regions, there are also various taboos and legends. For example, the human body is yang positive and the shadow is yin negative, and it is related to the soul. If someone accidentally steps on your shadow, the part of the body corresponding to the shadow may experience some bad reactions. Perhaps these folk rumors, from today's perspective, are just some superstitious sayings of the older generation. But in this peaceful little mountain village, suddenly something happened, strange related to shadows. One day, Dr. Dian was at home making paper figures and listening to opera, enjoying a long-lost peaceful afternoon. But just then, a car stopped outside the courtyard gate. A middle-aged man knocked on the door and greeted Dr. Dian from afar. Seeing that the visitor looked unfamiliar, the old man quickly got up to return the courtesy. The man said anxiously, "I come from Zhangjia village. Something happened to my daughter at home." He said that after the girl returned for summer vacation, he didn't know why. For 2 consecutive nights, she had been chopping the wall with a firewood knife. He didn't know what kind of addiction she had developed. The old man was also taken aback when he heard this, and didn't say much immediately. He directly told Zhao Dian to bring 2 paper figures and prepare to work. Before long, they had already rushed to Zhangjia village by car. But just after stepping into the gate, the old man stopped walking. It turned out that in order not to alert the target, these 2 paper figures could not be exposed too early. So, he asked Zhao Dian to find a bamboo basket and covered the paper figures. Only then did he follow the man to the living room. Seeing Dr. Dian's arrival, the girl's mother quickly got up to greet him. The old man responded while looking around. In an instant, he noticed the little girl sitting in the middle of the living room, watching TV. Of course, what attracted him was not the girl herself, but the horizontal lines on her neck. When the girl's mother saw this, her face immediately changed. "What's wrong with you, girl? Guests have come to our house, and you don't even get up to greet them." Hearing her mother's reprimand, the girl reluctantly turned her head. But this turn of her head, suddenly, the 2 young people were stunned at the same time. Then, the atmosphere in the room instantly became lively. It turned out that this girl was Zhao Dian's deskmate in elementary school, named Zhang Miling. They had many quarrels when they were kids. Now, one said the other was bad, and the other said the other was getting more annoying as they grew older. The 2 of them just kept bickering endlessly like this. This scene directly stunned the old man and the couple. For a moment, no one dared to interrupt. And the reason why these 2 young people started arguing as soon as they met dates back to the 3rd grade of elementary school. At that time, the 2 had a conflict, and Zhang Miling, in a fit of anger, actually poked a pen into Zhao Dian's forehead. Thus, Zhao Dian let out a ghost cry and darted out of the school. He was shouting and yelling the whole way. claiming Zhang Miling had cracked his skull. From that moment on, Zhao Dian never went back to school. But later, the matter escalated. The school demanded Zhang Miling apologize in person. Unexpectedly, when she went to find Zhao Dian, the kid was actually fishing in the river and told her to get lost, or he'd accuse her of being a female hooligan. It dawned on her then, these fabricated conflicts were clearly just Zhao Dian's excuse to skip school. Years have passed since then. Zhang Miling is now a top student in her senior year of high school. A good university was within her reach. As for Zhao Dian, in her view, he was, at best, a semi-literate with a third-grade education. Upon hearing this, Zhao Dian was instantly silenced, his anger extinguished. Hanging his head, he sulked over to Grandpa Dian, seeing Zhaoling still complaining. Her dad couldn't take it anymore either. Immediately, her father scolded her for being disrespectful and rude. But when she heard that these two men were invited by her father to treat her condition, Zhaoling's tone sharpened, because she refused to believe this superstitious nonsense. After all, she had lived at the school dorm for so long, but no one ever mentioned her sleepwalking. The more Zhaoling argued, the angrier she got. She slammed the door and stormed off, and retreated to her room. It seemed she had no memory of sleepwalking. The parents were at a loss. They could only apologize to Grandpa Dian profusely. In fact, the old man wasn't offended, because young people these days enjoy listening to strange and fantastical tales, but few truly believe them. The old man was understanding and didn't take offense. Then he began to examine the house. He noticed on the house's beam, a worn-out beam coin was hanging. The man explained it was taken from their old house and hung after they built the new one. It must have been there for years. The old man nodded in response. He then shifted the topic to the lines on Zhaoling's neck. Speaking of which, Zhaoling's mother had first noticed them. She had even asked the girl about it then, but Zhaoling said they didn't hurt her itch, and assumed it was from her pillow, and dismissed it. Upon hearing this, he immediately understood, but it was still early, and staying there wasn't helping. So the old man excused himself, saying he'd visit Wang Tishui in the village for a chat. If the girl sleepwalked again that night, they should call him. Also, they shouldn't let the girl find the hidden paper figures. The parents readily agreed, and saw them to the door. Before they knew it, it was midnight, and sure enough, the girl had another episode. So, the father hurried to Wang Tishui's house. In the inner courtyard, in the outer courtyard, he found the two old men inside were in a heated argument. Apparently, although Grandpa Dian was skilled in exorcism, his chess skills were terrible. One game of chess had dragged on for most of the evening because he kept taking back moves. So, Wang Tishui was refusing to let him take back another piece. But when they heard about the Zhang girl, the two old men immediately settled down. Despite their reluctance, they had to postpone their rematch. Back in the Zhang family's yard, they immediately noticed the girl moving strangely. They saw Miling with her back to them, swinging a hatchet rhythmically at a pillar. The old man glanced over, quietly muttered, "Just as I thought." Then, Grandpa Dian pointed at the pillar and told them to look closely. He said Miling wasn't actually chopping the pillar, but her shadow in the moonlight, and that spot corresponded to her neck. A young girl sleepwalking with a knife in the dead of night. Was she trying to strike back at whoever had cut her? No. She was actually chopping at her own shadow. More precisely, she was chopping at the neck of her shadow, thinking about the lines on the back of her neck. Her mother panicked and frantically pleaded with Grandpa Dian for help. The old man shook his head, motioning her to be quiet, lest they wake the sleepwalking girl. He then produced a yellow talisman to ward off evil. and gently placed it on Meiling's head. Instantly, it worked. Meiling's body suddenly shuddered, as if losing control, and collapsed. Luckily, her parents were quick thinking and quick acting, and rushed forward to catch her, and carried her inside. Soon, the girl woke up on her own, but when she opened her eyes, she was completely bewildered. She had been sleeping soundly in her bed. How had she gotten from her bedroom to the main room? And what were all these people doing here? Why were they all staring at her? Had something happened? Her mother quickly explained, saying, "You had another sleepwalking episode. If it hadn't been for Grandpa dying, who knows what kind of trouble you'd have gotten into." Hearing this, Zhang Meiling suddenly became aware. She began to believe she was sleepwalking. Otherwise, how else could it be? Without her knowing, she hadn't even realized she'd moved rooms. Seeing that the time was right, the old man prepared to take her pulse, to find out what was causing it. But when he checked, the old man was taken aback. To his surprise, the girl's condition was as he'd expected, the one outcome he'd hoped to avoid. Seeing Grandpa Diane's grim expression, the parents also grew tense. The old man looked pensive. He stood up and muttered, "This is going to be tricky." Hearing this, the father immediately caught on. He quickly stated, "Money is no object." Hearing that, the old man looked embarrassed. He hadn't meant that. His musing had sounded like he was asking for more money. So he hastily explaining that the difficulty wasn't about money, but about curing the girl. It requires a special approach. The situation is, Meiling was deeply affected by evil spirits. To completely remove it, they'd have to rely on Jingdian Zhao Dian's real name. Specifically, Jingdian and the girl needed to perform Yiling, a spirit transfer. What? At this, everyone in the room froze. Spirit transfer? Isn't that soul swapping? Or body swapping? Before the parents could react, Zhao Dian jumped up, agitated. He protested that Zhang Meiling was annoying. No way would I do a spirit transfer with her. Before he could finish, the old man delivered a sharp slap. Life's at stake. You're in no position to be picky. The slap not only stunned Zhao Dian, but also shocked the parents so much their eyes widened. So, that's how this bizarre arrangement was settled. The father brought out 2 square tables and placed them in the center of the main room. An enamel basin was placed between them. Then, the old man instructed the 2 young people to sit according to the male left, female right tradition, facing each other at their respective tables. Although Zhao Dian still looked reluctant, he reluctantly went over. But Meiling, for some reason, after waking from her sleepwalking, surprisingly, he rarely spoke, which was unusual. Following the old man's instructions, Zhao Dian looked like he was used to it. He put his big feet directly into the basin, striking a pose of being at someone's mercy. But Mai Ling hesitated a bit. She actually seemed shy. Zhao Dian, feeling like he had regained some ground, immediately said disdainfully, "I don't have athlete's foot. I'm very healthy. Put them in or not, it's up to you." Although this guy's mouth is a bit leaky talkative, but fortunately, the result is good. Seeing that the 2 children were ready, the old man immediately told the man to go and bring over those 2 paper figures, and according to gender, place them directly under the 2 tables. Then, the old man personally went to close the door, just to be safe. He even used his pipe to draw a fierce and menacing talisman on the door. So now, it's the crucial moment. He asked the 2 children to lie flat on their backs, preparing for soul shifting. As for the first step of this soul shifting, is to turn off the electric lights, leaving only candlelight. A young girl sleepwalking in the middle of the night was actually possessed by an evil spirit, and the solution given by Master Dian was surprisingly to have this girl and his grandson swap souls to perform soul shifting. Doesn't this mean my Ling's female body will be inhabited by a boy's soul, and her own soul will also be swapped into that rascal's body? But surprisingly, perhaps my Ling, this girl, was so frightened by the sudden change that she was in shock. She rarely threw a tantrum and didn't even say a word. At this moment, her face flushed. She and Jing Dian lay on separate square tables, with only a basin of water as the medium for soul shifting in between. Seeing that the time was right, the old man started forming hand seals without saying a word, and chanted the obscure and difficult soul-shifting incantation. In an instant, the candlelight on top of the two paper figures began to flicker. Then strangely, they gradually dimmed until they went out. At the same time, Jing Dian and Mai Ling, who were lying flat on the square tables, also seemed to have fallen asleep. In the darkness, only the sound of everyone's tense heartbeats could be heard. But just then, a bizarre scene appeared. On the smoke of the extinguished candles, a flash suddenly appeared, and a flame ignited downwards, relighting the candles again. This outrageous scene directly shocked the couple into gaping mouths. Master Dian's brow relaxed when he saw this, because he knew that the soul shifting of the two children was complete. Then the old man called out softly, asking them to wake up slowly. As soon as he finished speaking, Jing Dian and Mai Ling opened their eyes at the same time and sat up in unison. If he guessed correctly, at this moment, the one controlling Mai Ling's body was Jing Dian, this kid. Unexpectedly, as soon as this guy got up, he actually made a smug little expression and snorted, seeming a little smug. But this scene scared Mai Ling. Why is there someone in front of her who looks exactly like her? As soon as these words came out, the couple was also startled. Seeing is believing. Unexpectedly, this soul-shifting technique that was only in legends, they actually witnessed it. At this moment, Xiao Dian Jing Dian's nickname was very disdainful, saying they were making a fuss. I already said it's soul-shifting. It's definitely just the soul-changing bodies. Mai Ling understood after hearing this. She looked down at the unfamiliar body, showing a look of shock, seeing that the two children had no abnormal reactions after the soul shifting. The old man told them not to move around, lest they fall off the table because they are not used to the bodies. He asked Mai Ling to first control Jing Dian's body, to take her feet out of the basin, and then he threw a grain of realgar into it. Then he wanted to confirm whether Jing Dian still remembered the exorcism incantation he had taught before. Xiao Dian raised his eyebrows and smiled at the old man, saying, "Don't worry, I remember it clearly. Just to be safe." The old man still asked him to silently recite it in his heart first, and perform it after confirming there were no problems. Xiao Dian responded, and then, according to the old man's instructions, ran the exorcism technique to first collect the evil spirit into his dantian, and then forced it to the Yangquan point on the sole of his foot to expel it. In an instant, the clear basin of water suddenly filled with black smoke. It even bubbled like it was boiling, and after those black fumes came out, they scattered like headless FLIs, drifting all over the room. The old man smiled when he saw this. Very good indeed. It seems that the evil spirit has been completely forced out. Of course, he wasn't worried that this thing could escape. After all, that grain of realgar that was just dissolved in the basin was not just for show. Master Dian grabbed the demon-subduing implement and shouted into the air, "Now that the house has been tainted by evil spirits, since you're the house-protecting spirit, if you don't act now, when will you?" As soon as he finished speaking, he saw the hanging beam coins tied to the beam, suddenly moving without wind, spinning like a top, even stirring up a small whirlwind. And those scattered evil spirits were also sucked in and gathered into a ball. The old man laughed heartily. That's right, since it has been nourished by human incense for generations and become a spirit. Seeing that family members have been touched by evil spirits, of course, it has to be useful. At this moment, the evil spirit in the house had disappeared completely, and the hanging bean coins also hung down quietly. The old man shouted "good" when he saw this. Then he directly threw the demon subduing pestle in his hand up. With a bang, the demon subduing implement was perfectly accurate. It passed right through the square hole of the copper coin and nailed it to the beam. Great, finally done. Listening to the cheers of the grandfather and grandson, the family of 3, who had been terrified all along, finally felt a little relieved. Speaking of soul shifting between opposite sexes, some friends will definitely have many bold ideas. But today's matter happened somewhat reluctantly, because the male and female parties whose souls were swapped could not stand each other. No matter how they looked at each other, they were annoying. Although the soul shifting itself was to help Mai Ling, this girl, to exorcise the evil spirit. But unexpectedly, now that the evil spirit has been removed, Zhao Dian's stomach started acting up instead. You need to know, at this moment, inside Zhao Dian's body is Mai Ling's soul. As soon as this happened, Zhao Dian was stunned. He thought for a long time and couldn't figure out what bad things he had eaten today. Why would he get diarrhea at this time? But time waits for no one. Mai Ling was already sweating profusely in a hurry. She suddenly jumped up and ran out with quick little steps. Zhao Dian was immediately frightened. Oh no, oh no. If she does this, wouldn't she see everything? Thinking of this, he suddenly wailed loudly as if he had lost his innocence. Hearing this made the old man and others' mouths twitch. So, after a series of rushing sounds, Mai Ling finally came back. One of them was trembling with anger. The other lowered her head, face flushed and silent. This situation seemed to confirm Zhao Dian's guess. But unexpectedly, before Zhao Dian could get angry, Mai Ling, that girl, actually started crying first. For a moment, it was unclear who was actually wronged. Master Dian couldn't stand it anymore. He had to quickly urge them to swap their souls back to prevent further trouble. Luckily, the soul summoning went smoothly. Everything's all right now. As soon as Zhao Dian woke up, he hastily warned Mealing, telling her tonight's events must be kept secret at all costs. The old man, hearing this, glared and scolded. Don't be so petty. Why are you still going on about it? Now, Zhao Dian, having taken a big loss, completely lost it. Unexpectedly, Third Master Dian suddenly felt unwell himself. Seeing him covered in cold sweat, it was clear he was also having stomach issues. Now, Third Master Dian finally realized. It seemed it was because of the food at Wang Tishui's at noon. Something was wrong with the shrimp paste chicken. If he guessed right, that old Wang Tishui wouldn't have a peaceful night either. By noon, they took the paper figures from last night's spirit summoning and burned them in the sun. With this, the girl's possession was considered completely resolved. Seeing this, the couple warmly invited Third Master Dian to stay, insisting he join them for a meal and drinks. As for Zhao Dian and Mealing, they were promptly kicked out, told to go wander outside. Afterwards, the couple invited Third Master Dian into the main hall and began to inquire about the evil spirit. Seeing they were alone, the old man stopped being secretive. He explained that Mealing had been targeted by a headless thought. Hearing this name, the couple jumped in fright, although they didn't know what this headless thought was. Exactly. Just the word headless sounded ominous. As for this headless thought, simply put, it's formed from the collective resentment of people, because it can't form a proper face. It targets the living, People targeted by these resentments are often those whose Shangxing acute point belongs to the ghost hall. Therefore, the girl is now being haunted by this evil, as they witnessed when she got up in the middle of the night to chop at her shadow. It was actually the headless thought trying to take her soul. Fortunately, it was discovered early. The horizontal lines on her neck weren't numerous yet. If those lines had encircled her neck completely, it would have been too late. Seeing the couple's terrified expressions, the old man smiled reassuringly. He explained that the headless thought is ultimately rootless, and now it's been destroyed, so there's no chance of it returning. Rest assured. It was also fortunate that, after the spirit summoning ritual, Jingdian helped stabilize Miling's soul. She'll be even less vulnerable to evil spirits in the future. Hearing this, the couple finally broke into smiles, whether intentionally or not. As they chatted, Miling's mother steered the conversation towards Jingdian's engagement to a girl from a neighboring village. This wasn't really a secret. The old man explained the reason without much hesitation. He said Jingdian's engagement